Well, here we are, week 6 of class. Welcome. I can't believe it's going by so fast. So last week we talked about marketing and some basic concepts of marketing and maybe some things that you can see in sport. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about sport as a product, and we talked about product in the 4 P's of marketing. Product was one of the big ones, and sport is such a unique product for a few reasons, and one is that there's such a strong emotional connection to the product. You definitely don't feel the same way about your laundry detergent as you do about your favorite team. So think about that, and a challenge that must be for marketers to capitalize on the emotional attachment. And the other thing I think is really unique about sport as a product is that it's intangible. I mentioned laundry detergent earlier, and yeah, you can package that and put it in a jug and go set it on a shelf at Walmart and keep it in your laundry room. But sport isn't like that. It's not, you can't package it. You don't put it in a box. You don't put it on a shelf. It happens, and as it's happening, it's over. And then all we have are the memories. And so it's very intangible like that. We can't harness it. We can't package it. And so that's part of what makes sports so exciting. But it's a challenge that sport marketers have to deal with. So just a few interesting reflections on sport as a product, which was one of the 4 P's of marketing that you looked at last week, and something that I think is cool about sport marketing. Excuse me. So we had our second quiz last week, and I'll be grading those this week. And I will also be looking at your sports reporter assignment. So I'm looking forward to seeing who you chose to talk with about their job and their role in the sports industry. So hopefully you found somebody interesting and somebody who gave you some good insights. So this week we're looking at communications. And what are communications? We often hear communications lumped into kind of the same realm as marketing, but it's different. So marketing is more getting the name of the product out there and figuring out who you're targeting and what message they want to hear with advertising and with promotions. But communications is more of how a team gets its story out to the public. So, for example, the Razorbacks had a tough loss to TCU a couple of weeks ago, and the communications department had to craft a story to put out to the public about that loss. And that must be difficult. What's the explanation that they put out to fans? What's the message that they put out to fans? So you can kind of see how that's different from marketing. They're not trying to promote a product as much as just trying to create their story and give fans the story that they want to hear, or that they want fans to hear. So an interesting piece of communications that we're going to look at this week is crisis communications. So maybe, for example, a player gets into trouble and or something goes wrong in the organization, and then the organization or the team has to tell that story to the public and communicate how the organization is handling it and how it reflects on the organization's values, or maybe doesn't reflect on the organization's values. So, sometimes we see those in the news, and that's when an organization's communications staff really have to scramble to put out a story about that incident. And we saw an example of crisis communications a couple weeks ago with Hurricane Irma going through Florida, and how, some people were kind of mad that all of the Florida schools, Miami and Arkansas State, that was one of them, how did they justify their decision and how they were going to handle canceling a bunch of games? And Arkansas State lost out on a lot of money because they canceled that game. So how did the communication staff at Miami handle putting out that statement? So that's what communications are. So the next time you see a statement come out about a difficult situation, either with a player or with a current event, that's the communication staff doing their work. So watch for that in the news, and we'll see it. I also posted an additional reading this week with your reaction assignment. It's from Athletic Director U, and which is an online publication, and it's about how ESPN and sports journalism now is leaning towards letting teams or schools craft their own stories about their own players or their own teams rather than doing their own neutral or investigative journalism. So ESPN is taking a lot of their stories from the communications departments at, Ohio State University or the Milwaukee Bucks or whoever the team is. That's who they're taking their stories from. So teams really have an opportunity to put together the stories that the teams want the public to hear, rather than ESPN creating its own story based on their own, like I said, neutral journalism. So that's kind of an interesting trend that's going on. And so that weekly reaction asks you to reflect on that. Just a word about weekly reactions. Full credit reactions answer the question thoroughly, and it includes a whole page. Please don't take up a quarter of the page with putting your name and then my name and then the class name and then the assignment name. Don't waste space like that, please. You've done a good job about not copy pasting the question, but don't include a bunch of white space at the top or I'm going to count off. And also make sure you're addressing the question. Answer the question and then justify it with your own thoughts and then justify it with materials that we have seen in the class. If I don't see evidence of class material, then I don't see any proof that you have digested it and read it. So our next bigger assignment is the sports resume assignment. And this assignment asks you to find a job description that catches your interest in the sports world. And I know a lot of you aren't going to go into the sports field after this. You're just taking this class because you're curious, and that's totally great. I love your different perspectives. But this assignment asks you to find a job that you think is interesting in the sports field. Doesn't mean you're going to apply for it, just means you think it's interesting. And then look at your resume and adjust your resume. We're going to practice adjusting your resume to fit and tailor to that job description. So a big part of your resume is providing proof and evidence that you fit the qualifications of that job description. So I look forward to seeing kind of what you can match up on your own resume and on a job description. So that's just something that we're going to practice with crafting a resume and making it fit a job description. So I look forward to seeing what kind of job you find interesting. So everybody have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.